Okay, it is currently 6:25. We will get started at 6:30. I am Shelly Kunishige with the Hawaii Department of Transportation. Just to let everyone on the call know, this meeting is being recorded. If you are able to, please type your name into the chat so we can have a record of attendance. I have also placed our Title VI participant data form in the chat. So if you're able to, please fill that out. That gives us information about who's attending our meetings. Hello, I see we have some new attendees who have joined. It is currently 6:26. We will get started at 6:30. I'm Shelly Kunishige from the Hawaii Department of Transportation. Just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded.
And so the conversations are going forward about various ways we can approach that.
Hi, please mute yourself.
As a way to say, make them stand up and talk about.
Hello, please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, again, we will get started at 6:30. This meeting is being recorded. Please type your name in the chat so we can have a record of attendance. And if you could fill out our Title VI voluntary participant data form. I'm going to put that link in the chat again, just in case the new attendees have not seen it. Okay, it is now 6:27. Again, please mute yourself. I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. So if you are able to, please type your name into the chat for the record of attendance. Thank you to everyone who has typed their name into the chat. Again, this meeting is being recorded. And thank you for joining us. We will get started at 6:30.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it is now 6:29. We're about 1 minute out from starting. Again, I'm Shelly Kunishige with the Hawaii Department of Transportation. Thank you for joining our meeting on the Makaha Bridge 3 and 3A replacements. If you can, please type your name into the chat so we can have a record of attendance. And this meeting is being recorded.
I don't know how to type into this. I'm on my phone.
Okay, that's fine, ma'am. Are you able to mute yourself?
If she wants to share, we can just type it in for her.
Okay.
Yeah. You can type my name in. It's Kea, Kea. Klausmeyer, Klausmeyer, Among, Among. I say Among. Kara Klausmeyer Among.
AMONG?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Are you with any particular organization? Or
No,
just resident?
my family home is right in the middle of the project.
Okay. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you all. It is now 6:30. If you are able to, please mute yourself and we will get started. So today giving the presentation will be the Hawaii Department of Transportation Deputy Director for Highways, Ed Sniffen. We'll go through the presentation and have an opportunity for Q&A. So if you could please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. And again, this is being recorded. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here with us, where we present our reset for the Makaha Bridges project. If you're calling in on your phone and you can't see the slides that we're putting out, don't worry, we'll post this on our website, so you'll have this information later. We'll also record this this meeting and post it on our website so you and any of your friends and neighbors can view it as well. Really appreciate you taking the time to come out here as we reset this project. I'm Ed Sniffen. I'm the Deputy Director for Transportation for Highways. And we have on our staff here, or with us here, our design staff, our construction staff, and the contractor that's working on the project as well. So we can answer any questions and take any comments that you might have on how we reset this project. Next slide, please. So for those that are on their phones, I'll just describe the slides as we're going through because you can't see it. The first slide just shows the project location, showing Makaha Bridges 3 and 3A. These are the two bridges that we're moving forward on replacing. They're two aging wood structures. The need for this replacement is to make sure that we improve the structural integrity of these structures for this area, reduce flooding through the area upstream and at the roadway itself by opening or increasing the hydraulic opening, and improving safety overall throughout the route. Our original design took into account building two new reinforced concrete structures. With that, because concrete has to be poured in that location, and we can't precast it outside, we considered or we proposed a bypass road that would bypass both of the bridges to ensure that we could construct both bridges in place during the length of the construction period. In March of this year, we moved forward on awarding this contract to our contractor. Then we paused the project. We wanted to make sure that we considered the future use of this corridor, future impacts that we see based on sea level rise and climate change, and also considered the concerns that came from the community throughout. So we held up on the project to make sure we could reset, relook at the designs that we had, reconsider how we move this forward to minimize impacts to the public, take into account the concerns we heard from the public, try and address them that way, and also put facilities in place that were more appropriate for a corridor that we know is going to be impacted by sea level rise in the future. So in April of this year, we held off on the project. In May, we did some pre-consultation with some community members to get more feedback as we tried to look at this reset to get prepared for today, this June stakeholder engagement, where we can share our plans and our proposed move forward on this. Next slide, please. Throughout, we've been considering the conceptual alignment study that was done from Makaha Surfing Beach a long time ago, 1998, by the city. It proposed a realignment of Farrington Highway around or on the Mauka side of the park in that area. And that realignment at that time was considered for congestion management, for traffic flow and the like. Today, it takes a little bit more precedence from, it's a lot more important to consider it from a resilience perspective too, to pull our route away from the ocean and then the impacts that it could have. Next slide, please. We look
Sorry,
at
Ed,
these.
I'm gonna hit pause because I don't see the slides advancing.
I
Does
see it on
anyone?
my side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I see this next slide shows the anticipated inundation of this route in this area by 2100. This is considering a 1 meter rise in sea level throughout the state. And it shows not only inundation from the sea level rise itself, but also coordinating or corresponding groundwater increase. As you can see on this map, the location of Farrington Highway in the area of Keeley Drive is expected to be impacted tremendously. So these are all in consideration, or these are all taken into consideration as we look at our reset as we move forward. Next slide, please. So considering the concerns from the community about impacts to the rights of way that was necessary for the project, putting in place structures that would last 75 to 100 years, take 2 years to build in place and have significant impacts on the beach side through our bypass road, we decided to reset. So instead of looking at the original project, we wanted to make sure we had a project that didn't preclude any future realignment of Farrington Highway. We're not going to put any extremely expensive structures in place that's going to last 75 to 100 years if that route may be realigned. We also looked at the long-term effects of climate change and sea level rise on our routes to make sure that we put appropriate measures in place there. We're reducing the right-of-way. We wanted to reduce the right-of-way impacts that we have in the community. Not only the permanent takings that we're pondering for the widening of the hydraulic openings, but also the temporary construction parcels that were necessary for the bypass road and the construction portion itself. Then we're looking at wanted to make sure that as we move forward, we're positively looking at funding opportunities for that realignment project that was pondered in 1998. That project itself is now valued at about $75 million, and it's funding that we don't have at this time. So we're looking at other opportunities to try and see how we can get additional funding into play to make sure we can afford the project. And then last, we wanted to make sure we worked with Waina High School to consider what this alignment is going to look like in the future and what our infrastructure is going to look like. And when I say infrastructure, I'm not just talking about the road itself. We're trying to consider infrastructure as our roadway, definitely. Makaha Surfing Beach, absolutely. The wetlands, Mauka of the park, definitely. The watershed above, absolutely, and even the coral reefs. So we don't know enough about the area to be able to consider all of those infrastructure improvements and needs. So we're going to work with Waina High School and community members to make sure we can come up with plans to make sure that we can make improvements in the interim and in the long term. Next slide, please. So for the proposed redesign, to make sure we can minimize impacts to the community, we're looking at putting in 2 steel structures instead of the 2 reinforced concrete structures. Those steel structures will allow us to prefabricate the structures themselves prior to launching them into place. That precludes the need for the bypass road. So moving towards this type of construction gets us immediately to eliminate the bypass road that we had in place on our plans before. We also eliminate any temporary bridges and culverts that we had in place as part of that bypass road. With our steel structures themselves, they can span a lot longer lengths. So on Makaha Bridge 3, where we would have required a center pier within our channel in that area to support the long length structure, we now can eliminate that center pier and just support that structure on the abutments on the ends. And it's also going to eliminate the need for the construction parcel in Kia Mung's property. So we'll no longer have to take during construction any property that was related to that bypass road need in the past. Okay, I apologize for that. We came up with a better solution to make sure that we wouldn't have to impact you and your family's property there. This design, not only is it going to decrease these types of impacts that we're looking at, it's going to reduce the construction schedule overall. Where we had the 15-month to 18-month time period that we looked at impacting this route throughout, we're now looking at a 9-month construction period to be out of this area. We'll definitely reduce the construction cost because we don't have to build that bypass road and the other requirements that came with them. And we're looking at trying to see if we can start up in August of this year. That's the time frame. As part of this discussion, there's a raised grant or discretionary grant that comes from federal highways that's due in the first or second week of July. And we're preparing an application that takes into account the realignment needs for Farrington Highway near Makaha Surfing Beach. So we'll be applying that $75 million project and applying for a raised grant in this area. That raised grant does a couple of things. It gives us that potential to get additional federal funds into Hawaii specifically for that project. It also takes care of the upfront alternatives work analysis and upfront cost analysis that would have been done by OMPO in the past. It'll be done by DOT as part of the application process now. And after a grant is done, we'll have that information to show the needs for this area. Next slide, please. So this one just shows the roadway section that we're looking at. It's going to be two 11-foot lanes with two 6 foot 7 inch shoulders on the sides. You can see that there's concrete barriers that are on both ends to ensure that we can protect drivers from run off the road impacts. Next slide, please. This is a section view on the top and a rendering of what the structure would look like on the bottom. This is for Makaha Bridge 3. Next slide, please. And this one is for 3A. And after we finish up the presentation, I can always come back to these slides if you'd like. Next slide, please. So as we plan this out in that 9-month construction period, we're looking at staging everything out. So our foundation installation that's going to be done off the roadway that won't require full lane closures will take a month. We'll look at intermittent single lane closures throughout that 1-month period as necessary to move equipment or if we need additional space just to do it. But it's only going to be off peak time. After that, we're looking at roadway and utility work. That's another 4 months that we'd be considering looking at off-peak single lane closures. Then we'll do the channel improvement work that's off the roadway itself that won't require any lane closures. But we'll do them during the dry months to make sure that we minimize any impacts to the beach. Doing both of these bridges, there's going to be a requirement for us. What we're going to do, we're going to be building these new structures on the edges of the road. So for Bridge 3, that's on the east side of Kili Drive, we'll be building that on the Mauka side of the highway. It'll be supported by 6 foundations or pads, just to make sure we can keep it in place. And when that structure is completed and we're ready to move it, we'll deconstruct the existing bridge and slide over the new bridge into place. We'll do the same thing for Makaha Bridge 3A. Now, what that's going to require is, during a weekend, it'll require a 1-day full closure to make sure we can demolish the existing structure and slide the new structure in place. Next slide, please. So for Makaha Bridge 3, there's an existing detour route, of course, that that people can use during that time frame. It's a long route, definitely, but at least there's one that's available. Next slide, please. During for 3A, there is not a detour route available. So during that 1-day shutdown, we'll be working with emergency management to ensure that there's emergency services on the west side. We'll be putting in place plans to ensure that if there's an emergency need to cross this area with vehicles, we can provide that access. And we'll be working with the military to ensure that they understand that there's going to be a 1-day closure through this time. These closures are going to be planned far in advance, and we'll make sure that we get these dates to all of the community members and all of the affected stakeholders to ensure that everybody can plan during that time. We'll be working with emergency management. We'll also be working with the city to ensure that we can look at transportation alternatives during this time, during this one-day shutdown. We're going to be choosing time periods that'll be best for the community. So hopefully we can start up that one-day closure time period in the early evening or late evening and continue it through from there. Next slide, please. That's all I have to present. Want to make sure that we kept this short so we can take any questions, comments, and concerns so we can ensure that we can move this project forward in the best way. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so we're going to open it up to Q&A. We had one question from Carmen Guzman Simpliciano in the chat, and it was how can I be involved as a community member when you research the areas pertaining to the wetlands? And the second part of her question, will the recording be sent to us via email? So we did mention that it will, so I will be posting that as a link to our presentations page.
So you can get involved. We're setting up with Waianae High School to do this study. Please reach out to the principal there if you'd like to be involved. Absolutely welcome community involvement on this one as we work with the kids in this project-based collaboration to move this project forward.
Okay, thank you. And we have someone with their hand up, Pete Meinster. Mr. Meinster, please go ahead.
Yes, hello. Thank you for setting this up. As I posted in the chat, I'm actually extremely relieved that you've mentioned the realignment of Farrington Highway and that you've referenced the Makaha Beach Park Master Plan numerous times, and that you're looking at obtaining grants to accomplish that, because that is a huge factor for the community here locally. They want to get Farrington off the beach. And that would create the resilience that we really need for Farrington. So that's great news. Good thinking on the emergency services and getting those available for the road closure, but it's still a pretty aggressive step, and I understand it's necessary. But for the kupuna that live northwest of Kepuhi Point, their needs may not be necessarily on a schedule, and communications are sometimes difficult to get out to people if they're not subscribing to newspapers and they're not online. So what kind of outreach are you planning for these individuals, and are you planning on maybe setting up a convenience structure or a temporary structure on this side of the bridges for those individuals should they need essentials and they didn't catch on or didn't get the message?
Absolutely. So we'll be looking at making sure that we're pretty aggressive in getting more information out, not only through our website, through the newspapers, and also through message boards on the highway itself.
Okay.
We're making sure that we work with area legislators to try and get out as many as big a coverage as possible, and we'll definitely set up some kind of emergency services. I don't want to say structure, but emergency services area to ensure that during this time everybody's taken care of.
All right, thank you very much. And then the other question was with regards to the grant that you're going to be writing a proposal for. What kind of transparency would we as the community have, and what kind of assurance would we have that the money that is allocated from a grant application like this is directed to the realignment 100% and not reappropriated in some other way?
When discretionary grants are distributed to states, they're distributed specifically for projects. So they line item out. There's nothing that we can do with that money other than the project that was applied for.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have two questions, multiple questions in the chat now. The first one is from Claire Caulfield with Civil Beat, and the question is, when will the closure dates be made public?
We're going through the schedules now. We're looking at within the next month, maybe month and a half, that we have our schedule lined up so we can get those dates out. There's a couple of things that we're considering throughout, making sure that we consider what the community is looking at or community's needs during that time. Definitely big surf season comes in December, January, February. So try and avoid those time periods because I know there's a lot of emergency access that's necessary during that time, and a lot of events that the Leeward Coast looks at during that time as well. So we'll be considering those types of events first, setting up the schedule from there, and within the next month, month and a half, we should have those dates.
Okay, and the next question, and I see a hand up, we will go in order. So Miss Rooney, Kathleen Rooney from the chat asks, does the 2 to 3 foot shoulder / right away space on work for people walking or biking?
And let's go back to the section diagram, please. So the shoulder itself is 6 foot, 6 3/4, if I'm reading that correctly. I think the 2 foot that you're looking at is just that's the width of the concrete barrier on the bridge itself. So that 6 foot, 6 3/4 is wider than the 5 foot shoulder that we normally look at as part of bike and pedestrian access. So we believe it's going to be usable for everyone.
Okay, and then we have William Isla from DHHL. Thanks for listening to the community and creating a better project, including applying for the federal grant to plan for road alignment consistent with the master plan in the 90s.
Thank you, William.
And then next we have former Representative Joe Jordan. How are you handling the bus transportation during the closure period?
Really good question. We're working with DTS now to try and figure out what that schedule is going to look like, to try and see if there's going to be a bus that goes to the structure itself and a bus on the other side to get people there. So we're hoping to work that out with them, and we can get back to the community on those details as soon as we complete them with DTS.
Okay, we have one hand up in the participants, Ms. Guzman Simpliciano.
Hi, this is Joseph Simpliciano. How you guys doing? I just had a couple of questions. One was, will there be any speed mitigation on these new bridges? And the other one was, I know Keeley Drive it's not even a city-owned road, but it's kind of an issue right now because that road's not even supposed to be there. What is HDOT's take on that, being that Keeley Drive is connected to Farrington Highway? Will there be any plans or for the city to absorb it or anything like that? I know you guys not city, I know the difference, but I'm just wondering, like, how are we gonna move ahead with the realignment if Keeley Drive is a problem? Thank you.
Yeah, so a good question. So we will consider all of that as part of the realignment, especially where the realignment should start, actually. So if we realign starting from the east side of Keeley Drive, that means we'd have to cross over the stream twice with the new road. If we started the realignment on the west side of Bridge 3, then we don't have to cross the stream. Then we get a little bit more options as we go. So we're trying to consider those options as we go forward. The application that we're going to give into the federal government is not going to necessarily cover the perfect alignment, but it's going to give us the funding to start studying it to make sure that we push forward the right one. So definitely we're going to come back to the community to talk about that one. On speed mitigation itself, on the bridge itself, we don't have any plans for speed mitigation. But talking to the community, especially in front of Makaha Surfing Beach, definitely seeing the need for something out there. We put in those speed humps near the pedestrian crosswalk in that area, blocked off the stalls to make sure that people can see the pedestrians walking across to go to the comfort station. But still looks like in the areas outside of that, some people going a little bit fast. So we're hoping to work with Waianae High School, actually, so that the kids could help us come up with solutions in that area. Could mean raised pedestrian crosswalks like we've done in the past. Could mean other types of speed mitigation, but we'd like to work with them, see what kind of improvements we can make, and as part of the short-term improvements for that route.
Okay, next we have a question from the chat from Trish and Mike. And they're asking, can you please repeat what is happening with the Makaha Master Plan, Beach Park Master Plan? When will that begin?
So that one is not us. The beach master plan itself is the city. But for us, we're looking at the realignment of Farrington Highway to get it outside of the park so that the park can be master planned. In order for us to do that, we need $75 million. So we're working with the federal government to try and get a discretionary grant to hopefully kickstart our affordability for this project. So we don't have a time frame yet, but we have a go forward action on it.
Okay, and we have another question from the chat. Pete Meinster, maybe you could coordinate with one of the local grocery stores, Waianae store or Tamura's, to set up a little convenience stall on the closed side. Just a thought, but there are a lot of residents northwest of Kepuhi Point. Yeah,
good question. Good suggestion. Definitely we're going to reach out.
Okay, and we have one more question from the chat. Former Representative Joe Jordan. Mahalo, there may be a challenge since the bus uses Makaha Street as a turnaround.
Definitely. So I'm gonna let the smart guys at DTS figure out how best to adjust here. But we'll work with them and then we'll get back to the community with information on how we can adjust on transportation.
We have another question from Carmen or Joseph Guzman Simpliciano. As part of my petition, Save Makaha Beach, it addressed the need to restore water to the Mulivai. Will the realignment project include this with the Board of Water Supply?
We can look at how we can consider it or how we can add into the project. I don't know all that's necessary to put into it. But if you don't mind, if you can give us a contact information, we can reach out and talk straight with you.
Okay, another question from the chat. With whom is DOT working regarding the sewer line realignment?
Sorry, what was the question again?
With whom is DOT working regarding the sewer line realignment?
Anytime we work through realignments that require relocating facilities or utilities, we always work with the utility owners.
Hi, Kainani. Carmen entered her email in the chat.
Thank you, Carmen. So as we're trying to plan out these dates for the closures, we'll make sure that it's during a weekend. Hopefully, I mean, definitely the one with no events in the area. And hopefully with a lot of information, a lot of upfront work with the community, so everybody expects it. And we'll schedule them out far in advance to ensure that everybody can plan for them.
So I think I saw earlier our highways representative to the Nanakuli and Waianae Coast neighborhood boards. George, do you want to say hi? Because I'm thinking you'll probably make notification to the neighborhood boards as soon as we know the dates.
Yeah, thanks, Shelly. Yes, that'll be me. So I'm scheduled to come out next month, July. So I should be there soon.
Awesome.
But not that we'll get the the dates by then, but as soon as we have them, I'll transmit them to the neighborhood board chairs.
And we have another question in the chat from a Stan Lum. Is the cost of the sewer line along the Realigned Highway a part of the $75 million price tag?
Yes, it's considered as part of it.
And sorry, thank you, George. Okay, we have another question from Claire Caulfield from Civil Beat. How does the cost of the new temporary bridges compare to the cost of the original plan?
We don't have a cost locked down yet. We're still negotiating that with the contractor. So we'll have more information as we move forward. Before we start up on this construction, we'll have more information within the next month.
Okay, and then we have another question from Mr. Meinster. And it's I guess it's more of a comment. Joe, residents of Macau have actually lobbied to get bus off Macau Street, turning at KL Beach Park, where there's a restroom. There are some residents who did not consider stops on Farrington feasible, though. And I also see that Mr. Meinster has his hand up. So if you have anything to add to that.
Thank you. No, that was just a comment for Joe in the chat. I did have another question. I'm just figuring out how to phrase it. So I'll come back to you guys.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
I can go ahead if no one else is asking questions.
Please.
So the Farrington realignment study that was with OMPO was cancelled, and it was at the request of the DOT. And so that wasn't a very large budget, but there was already a budget allocated, and the community was pushing very aggressively to maintain that realignment feasibility study. Given the new plan now, and given the DOT's renewed commitment to a realignment, what prompted the push from the DOT to cancel that realignment feasibility study, and why? How are we justifying that now, given the fact that we now have to put 75 million into, in part, it's going to be another feasibility study by the DOT, I'm assuming.
So first, the cancellation of the OMPO funding wasn't at DOT's request, but it was supported by DOT. So OMPO needed funds to be moved to other projects, and we supported that. And we supported it because if they did a realignment study and we didn't have any funds to push that study or push the project forward, in the future, when we'd have to do the project, we'd have to redo the study anyway. From my perspective, it's not an efficient use of funds. And in general, I think we're better at it. So what we supported is if they use that funding for the other projects that they know they're going to move forward with, we would take on the responsibility of taking care of that study when it's necessary. At this time, because we're applying for that discretionary grant, it's absolutely necessary. So we'll do the study on our own.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, I see Mr. Sokolowski has his hand up. Go ahead, sir. Hi, I'm sorry, I can't hear you if you'd like to unmute yourself. Mr. Sokolowski. Or you can type in the chat. You can type your question in the chat. Okay, I think I see something in the chat now. So this is from Stan Lum. What is the timetable for the RAISE grant? And if it goes through, what is the timetable for the start and completion of the highway/sewer realignment?
So the RAISE grant application is due in the first or second week of July. Typically, the administration takes about 6 months before they get back to us with a yes or no. Once the funding's in place, we generally have 2 years to get the project out. So get it designed, all the environmental permits set, and bid out to construction. Usually takes about 6 months to bid and award a project, and then it would be the time length that's necessary for the construction project itself.
Okay, Mr. Sokolowski, would you like to try unmuting yourself or typing your question in the chat? Any other participants with questions?
I have one more, Pete Meinster.
Go ahead, sir.
Edwin, the impact of a 100-year flood. I know that we had a presentation maybe a year ago on the likelihood of a 100-year, well, it's a misnomer. I think it's the 1% flood or whatever it might be. The impact of one of those, a scenario like that, on these temporary bridges. How would they hold up to it? I mean, I know we're increasing the hydraulic clearance, I guess, is paraphrasing what you stated. So there's more space underneath the bridge for the water to flow through, but these bridges are structurally different from obviously concrete and masonry constructions. So how would they hold up to something like that if it were to happen?
Well, they're absolutely safe. I don't want to call these temporary structures. These are structures that are going to last us 35, 40 years. It's just not going to be the 75 to 100-year designs that we're looking at for a concrete or reinforced concrete structure. The structure itself and the hydraulic opening is designed for the 100-year flood, so it'll stand up absolutely well to flood events that we're expecting in this area.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so again, Mr. Sokolowski, you still have your hand up. If you're able to, please either unmute yourself and ask your question or type it in.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, but I guess.
Hello? I heard the start of your, hello?
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Okay, great. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I was just wondering, since we don't know quite yet what the two bridges are going to cost under the new design, do we know where the monies are going to come for those bridges? Or is that something down the road?
Those two
Sounded
bridges
like
are going
it's
to be
pretty good.
the two bridges are going to be cheaper than the two concrete structures that we had planned previously. So we have the funding that in place that was going to be used for the two concrete structures, pivoting towards these two steel bridges, getting rid of the bypass road and the two temporary structures that were necessary for that, will make the project a lot cheaper, especially because we can reduce the construction time frame. So we have the funding in place for the project.
Okay, thanks.
Another question from Pete, for me. The construction budget that you have for these bridges, does that factor in the maintenance implication on steel structures? I mean, again, on a concrete structure, once it's built, there's very little inspection required. But on these steel structures, I'm assuming there's going to be a routine or a scheduled kind of inspection criteria. So does that factor in the cost of that and the vendor that's conducting those inspections and all the rest of it, or will DOT be doing those in-house?
It's DOT. We take care of it afterwards. So all bridges on our system are inspected once every 2 years. If we see any issues with the structure itself, we do a lot more monitoring of the wooden structures that are out there right now. We inspect them every 6 months or so. So the inspection and the maintenance is all included. The new steel structures are going to be epoxy coated so that we can protect it from corrosion, so we can get that longer life without a heavy maintenance.
Thank you.
Okay, I see another question in the chat from Michael Rice. How long of a timetable are we looking at for construction?
So if we start up, we're looking at potentially starting up in August with construction. In general, we're looking at a 9-month period for this construction sequence to go. In the slides previously, we showed in general what the steps would be, the length of time for foundations and utility relocations and the bridge launch overall. But in general, overall, it's going to be a 9-month period.
We have another question in the chat from former Representative Joe Jordan. How will you handle parking at Makaha Beach Park during construction?
So I don't believe our construction will impact the beach park parking. So I don't foresee any issues with the project versus the parking in that area.
Go ahead. I see Joe Jordan's hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so Ed, can I elaborate on that a little bit then? So currently, because everybody's rushing to the beach parks due to the lockdown over the last year, there is more parking at Makaha Surfing Beach now, near the bus stop, near Keeley Drive, going up Keeley Drive. And I'm thinking that might affect your construction area. So although people do use the actual parking lot there, it's clear we don't have enough parking for that beach park. So I know there's going to be some sort of blocking. So how are you guys going to handle that?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to block off parking from areas that would conflict with construction. Joe, I didn't think anybody used the parking lot. I thought everybody just parked along the highway over there. But we'll make sure that we work it out so that in the areas where we're constructing, we'll keep it safe. We'll make sure we block off areas that so people cannot park there. At this time, we're not impacting Keeley Drive as part of this project. So we can see how that looks on the construction piece.
Okay, we have another question in the chat from Trish and Mike. So the Maili Bridge, the Maipaloa Bridge is taking a long time. Will the same resources be working on this as well, or other new builders?
This is gonna be a new crew for this one, and it's a different project. Maipaloa took a long time because there was a lot of unforeseen that we hit out there during our foundation drilling and preparation, building of the wing wall and the like. We had a lot of things out there, utilities and such, that we didn't expect. So we had to redesign 3 or 4 times to get around those unforeseen situations. We're finally moving, the foundations are finally in, so that project can move forward very quickly now.
We have another question in the chat from Michael Rice. I apologize if this was answered earlier, but will there be bypasses erected south of the bridges? How long will the road be out of commission for?
There's going to be no bypasses. As part of this project, we reset from the reinforced concrete structures that we had planned previously to building prefab steel structures that are built on the sides of the highway and launched into place. It gets rid of the bypass requirements now. So there's going to be no bypasses built on the Makai side of the road.
Another question in the chat from Stan Lum. There are implications for enhanced tourism for the Waianae Coast and specifically for Makaha Beach after the realignment of the highway. Are there any potential funding sources from the Hawaii visitor industry?
That one I cannot answer. We're working right now with Hawaii's Tourism Authority to talk about that balance between visitor experience, natural resources, and our quality of life for our residents here. We'll work with them to see what this is going to look like in the future, especially in areas that are extremely populated now with tourists, like Makaha Surfing Beach, like Hana Highway on Maui, and like Laniakea. We're trying to work out those solutions now, but we can get back to you on from their perspective. They can get back to you on what they're looking at for this community.
And we have another question in the chat from Michael Rice. So does that mean all the prep work will go in beforehand and the bridges will be demoed and replaced within, say, a day?
That's correct. That's exactly right.
And we have a request. Can you put the slide with the side view of the prefab bridge up? What is the foundation for the bridge?
So the foundations are drilled shaft foundations that support the bridges at the ends, at the abutments.
Okay, and from Miss Guzman Simpliciano, can we get cement barriers dropped on Makai by First Bridge to protect iwi kupunas there? Sorry, off subject, but it would be great if you could work with city to get that done. Lifted trucks ride sand through that area.
We can work with the city on that.
And from Trish and Mike, are those foundations built on day of replacement or ahead of time?
Those are built ahead of time. So all the foundation work, all the prefab work will all be done prior to that one day launch. So during that one day, the only thing we're going to be doing is deconstructing the existing bridges and launching the new bridges into place.
It's 7:18, so we have a little more than 10 minutes left in our meeting time. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead. Okay, Mr. Meinster, please go ahead.
So you call it the launching of the new bridges, but I'm assuming you're going to use a crane to set them in place. How are you going to be setting them in place?
Miles, you guys can you guys answer the process we're looking at?
Basically, we are pushing it out over the stream, and then we're sliding it over. It's possible that we may need cranes, but I think right now the plan is not to be utilizing cranes. to actually set the bridge.
I see. So it's long enough that you can kind of use the one bank as a fulcrum and slide it over.
It's correct. It's basically like a counterweight as it's extending it out,
Yeah.
and against the other side.
All right. And then where do you guys plan on parking and storing all your heavy equipment?
Within there is a staging area for us to utilize, right where that lower left side of that intersection.
So we had started clearing that out.
Oh yes, I saw
somewhere in March, yeah, because we thought we were starting.
Yeah.
So that area.
Okay, I was curious why that was being cleared.
Parcel.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you.
And in the chat, Michael Rice is asking, similar to how the military does with their temporary bridges?
I believe so.
And given that we have the contractor on, what confidence does the DOT have that the contractor will see this through at the existing quoted cost and that it's going to be running on time? We've seen issues with contractors before where projects get started and then midway through or even a quarter way through the contractor is suddenly replaced because certain terms weren't being met. Do we have every assurance and we can rest easy that this is not going to be the case in this situation?
I feel very comfortable. We haven't had to fire this contractor yet.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome, Mike.
Not a question, but a comment. I really appreciate you guys coming up with this alternate solution. The community were understandably upset at the first version, at Makaha Bridges version 1.0. So the fact that you're also talking actively about the Farrington realignment and the Makaha Beach Park master plan, or some form of it at least, is definitely inspiring some confidence. I hope we can keep up that synergy to get this done.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Pete.
Then I just wanted to add that the slide deck will be posted to our presentations page, and I've put the link to that page in the chat. So as soon as I get off this call, I will be posting it to that website. So give me about 30 minutes after we end.
Another question from Pete, if I may.
Yes.
Sorry, because these questions keep popping up because, of course, this is all new material for us, right? So, uh, again, not to bash the contractor, but I was curious, how many bids did we have for this version 2.0?
This was actually a concept that the contractor came up with to make sure that we minimize the cost and the impacts to the community. So when we started working with this, once we had the concerns about how we were moving forward with the larger concrete structures, stopped the contractor, had them started talking to them about what we were looking for to meet the community needs and the DOT's needs of resilience. And the contractor came up with this proposal.
I see. Thank you.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know, I'm kind of curious. If we have this time, I guess we could get it answered. When the project first started, why was the alternative 3 even an option when the first time around it was, you know, what is the word I'm looking for? It wasn't supposed to happen. So why this time around was that even on the books to do the alternative 3?
So, Ms. Guzman Simpliciano, I'm gonna clarify. By alternative 3, you mean the bypass?
Correct. The bypass in itself that was going to go on Makaha Beach. I'm just wondering because, you know, as a community member and talking with the old timers that been fighting this project, the alternative 3, the bypass, why was this even brought up again and viable to think that we could do it in 2021? Just so that, speaking bluntly, we don't ever have to do this again. We shouldn't have to have gone through that, I believe. Creating petitions and making all these calls and, you know, standing on the side of the road and waving signs. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, so appreciate the question. The project was moved forward because it was technically viable. It was technically proven to move forward. It was cleared from an environmental perspective. But based on the needs for the future, based on the route and based on the community concerns, we held it. We stopped it to make sure we could come up with a better solution for the community.
Okay, and we have a question in the chat from Mike and Trish. So were there multiple bids for the original bridge plan before the contractor came up with this new plan? And I'm going to put in the chat the High E-Pro solicitation.
Yes, so there were multiple bids that came in for the original construction project. Like every other project that we have, when we start looking at different solutions, the contractors can come up with value-based options that the state can accept. If the state accepts it and we negotiate a price, it must be lower than the price of the original contract.
Okay, we are now at 7:29. Ed, would you have any closing comments?
Thank everybody for coming out. Really appreciate you coming to the meeting, adding in your thoughts, so we can make this a better project for everybody. You can still send in information up on the screen right now. There's a website or an email you can send to Makaha Bridges at qr-se.com. On our DOT website, we'll have this meeting recording posted. And we'll also have this presentation posted as well. So please, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, send them in to us. Thank you.
Sorry, before we go, there's a question I missed in the chat from former Rep Joe Jordan, and is Grace Pacific the contractor for Maipalaoa Bridge also?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great. It's now 7:30. Thank you all for participating and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aloha.